Hi everyone, thanks for joining in. I'm excited to have Lee Christine joining us. I was just saying to Lee, I think this is the third time we've had you now, so really great to have you again.
Thank you. It's great to be here again.
So, Lee is the author of three crime novels with romantic elements set in Australia's iconic snowy mountains. Charlotte Pass was published by Allen and Unwin in February 2020, and Crackenback followed in February 2021, and Dead Horse Gap in February 2022. And I'll just show, I can see your cover there in the back, and here's
I
my
bet.
copy of Dead Horse Gap. So, Charlotte Pass recently won the Australian Romance Readers Association Award for Favourite Romantic Suspense in 2020. Prior to her shift into crime writing, Lee wrote 6 romantic suspense novels published with Harlequin, Australia's Escape Publishing. Lee loves connecting with her readers and has made many library appearances. She has also appeared on a panel at the Newcastle Writers' Festival, Lake Macquarie Library's Right Here Festival, and been a guest speaker at major fundraisers for the Friends of Newcastle University and the Mark Hughes Brain Cancer Foundation. Lee has 2 grown children. She lives in Newcastle with her husband and her Irish Wheaten Terrier Honey. And just wanted to mention as well that thanks to Alan and Unwin, if you are watching now and type in a question for Lee, you'll have a chance to win a copy of Dead Horse Gap. And I wanted to mention before we go into a little bit about Dead Horse Gap that I've read all 3 and really, really enjoyed them all. And it's good to have a series and have people following through the series and have some familiar people.
Definitely. Yeah. People like connecting with the characters and seeing where they're up to.
Yeah, exactly. So thanks again for joining us. Do you want to start off by telling people a bit about Dead Horse Gap?
Yeah, well, Dead Horse Gap, as Jackie said, is the third novel in my Snowy Mountains crime series. And for those people that might have read Charlotte Pass and Crackenback, those stories were very contained in very small areas. So Charlotte Pass was obviously set in Charlotte Pass, which is only about 600 people, has a population of about 600 people, and that's at the height of the ski season. In the summertime, it's a handful. So very, very small village, very contained and isolated and snowed in winter. As far as Crackenback goes, it's even small. It was I even zoomed into the landscape, even it made the setting even smaller in an isolated lodge in Thredbo. So with Dead Horse Gap, I didn't want to keep doing the, lockdown only that ski area part of the mountain. So with Dead Horse Gap, I decided to go wider. So just logistically, a bigger expanse across the mountains to take in some of the other surrounding areas. So in Dead Horse Gap, there's scenes in Tumbarumba, there's scenes in Tooma. A lot of the story takes place in Cancoban, which was built for the Snowy Hydro workers. It's a town of about 300 people, and it's at the foothills of the main range. So while it doesn't snow a lot there, it's very, very cold, and you can get a dusting of snow there. And then there's scenes as well in Thredbo where the police are located. There's scenes in Jindabyne and Cooma and Sydney. And there's even a chapter at Lemon Tree Passage, which is up in Port Stephens. So I went wider with the story this time, but still kept the police in Thredbo. So we've still got lots of snow. So yes, and one of the things that I wanted to incorporate into the story is the Alpine Huts. I knew I wanted to have a squad member undercover. And of course, I wanted to start with a dead body. Which is always
of course, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if maybe there's a little bit of a Dead Horse Gap that you'd like to read to us today.
Yes, I can read you the prologue.
That would be great.
It's only fairly short. It's about a page and a half, if that. Okay. I should have brought my glasses, but I can see okay. They didn't call him Cowboy for nothing. Most pilots would have aborted the landing on the tiny airstrip, unwilling to descend over the mountainous terrain in the dark. But he knew the runway was there, and he was confident he could make it. He should have landed hours ago, but a blizzard had forced him to fly around the weather. Now, long after darkness and aviation last light, the pilot made a bumpy approach into Cancoban Airport in the snowy mountains. He was accustomed to night flying, thanks to years of crop dusting after dark, and he had confidence in his Cessna. He had checked it prior to departure, checked he had enough go juice, checked that he himself was fit to fly. Fierce gusts buffeted the light plane as he worked the throttle, controlling his descent. Focused on his instruments, his mind totally in the cockpit, he checked the plane was straight and level, checked his airspeed was good, checked his altitude and GPS track. He looked up, scanning the darkness for the visual cues he needed to put the light plane safely on the ground. The clouds parted, and in the momentary wash of moonlight, he glimpsed the 3-kilometre stretch of water he'd been searching for. He closed the throttle, raised the nose and extended the undercarriage, slowing the Cessna before it dropped into the fog bank, hovering over the Cancoban pondage. He switched on his landing lights. 2 bright beams appeared on each wingtip. Tension gathered at the top of his spine. In the reflection of his landing lights, he could see the strands of fog becoming thinner. Now, any moment now, the pilot let out a triumphant whoop. He was over the water, flying at a slow 70 knots and 1 minute away from landing. He chose full flap before opening the throttle to maintain his approach as the flaps ran to position. The airstrip was short and devoid of runway lights, but it was there, waiting in the darkness, just on the other side of the concrete spillway. 5 seconds to landing, and the pilot glimpsed the turbulent water below, gushing from the spillway and flowing into the swampy plain river. Then he was touching down, applying the brakes as soon as the wheels struck solid ground. Euphoria raced through his body, but it was immediately replaced by horror at a looming shape blocking the runway. Unable to stop in time, he wrenched the plane to the left, hoping to ground loop whatever it was. Time slowed. The plane careered to the left, a tyre exploding like a bomb. Above the blood pounding in his ears, he heard the grating, tearing sound of metal as the right wing clipped the tractor and was torn from the plane. The engine hit the ground, flinging fuel across the airstrip and sending the control column slamming into the pilot's chest. With the breath punched out of him, he groped for the Cessna's door handle, sparks spraying like fireworks all around him.
Thanks so much for reading that. A great introduction to the book.
Pretty fiery start.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, what was the first idea you had for this book? And also, what came first, the plot, the characters, or the setting?
Well, I think, I mainly had I obviously had the main characters, the detectives, Ryder and Flowers and Sterling from the other 2 books. So I sort of had them there, but of course I had to, think of the wider suspects and the townspeople of where I was going to set the book in Cancoban. But I think the first idea with whether it was the plot or how did I get started with the idea, I wanted a dead body and I wanted the Alpine Huts to be in this story. So many of you might know already or have seen that the Alpine Huts that are scattered across the snowy mountains, but a lot of them were, or some of them were burnt down in the 2020 bushfires. And there's a Kosciuszko Hut Association that rebuild and restore some of them. And so I knew I wanted the Alpine Huts in there because I visited them, and they were built by a variety of people. They were built by, some were built by fishermen, so they're beautiful ones constructed of river rocks, and they have fireplaces in them that are, river stones, and they're really quite beautiful. And then there's ones, really old ones, that were constructed by the cattlemen, the stockmen, the graziers that used to bring their cattle up to the high country in summer, but the weather can change so quickly there and still go below zero in summertime. So for protection, the cattlemen built them. Then the Snowy Hydro built them for their workers when they were constructing the first Snowy Hydro build. And of course, then the ski industry built some huts from where people had perished in the backcountry. Skiers had got lost or got caught with the weather. And so they've been built by all these people over the years, and they're really historic. So I knew I wanted to have the Alpine Huts in there. And my first thought was to have a dead body in one of the huts. So I was sort of going to have someone caught out by the weather, slogging. The prologue was going to be someone slogging through the blizzard and sort of knowing the hut was there and making for this hut and finally getting inside the hut, and there was a dead body in the hut. And the story would go from there. But I had a bit of a problem with that because just the logistics of getting the police up to, like, onto the mountain range and getting forensics and all the people that needed to be there, I thought, oh, that's going to be a bit difficult. So when I was down there on a trip, I was driving through Cancoban, and I'd been through Cancoban quite a few times, but I spotted through the trees and down a dirt road, like I'd seen the pondage and the spillway, but I hadn't noticed the airport that was there, and I noticed the grassy airport. And as soon as I saw that, the plot came together, because I thought instead of having the dead body there, I'd have a plane flying in, and I knew I wanted a feud with two families, and that could be the person in the family that died, and then that family would be a family of suspects, and also the other family that were involved in the feud. So the plot came together there, and it was funny because I'd just done the David Baldacci masterclass. My kids had given me a masterclass thing for my birthday, and so I thought, I'll do David Baldacci. So I did his. And he was sort of going, and I didn't have it in my head, but I remembered it when I saw that airport. He was sort of saying, well, if you're walking down, and you're in front of, there's the FBI building, and there's a plane up in the sky, and there's, the Potomac Bridge, and there's a man down a manhole, and you should be, and he had that American accent, and he's sort of saying, how did all of these things are linked, because when you want to start with the big pop. And so when I saw the Cancoban airport, I thought, oh, I know, the plane can come in. That's where he can die, and I thought that's what I had his voice in my head. So it all came together. So I guess, the plot, seeing I had some characters already.
Yeah, and we've got quite a few people watching, which is great. Just reminding people watching that if you've got a question for Lee, please type it in comments and I can read it out, and you'll have a chance to win a copy of Dead Horse Gap, thanks to Alan and Unwin. I've got a question from Jill. She wondered if you've always wanted to be an author.
No, I first started writing song lyrics. I was in a band. So that was the first time, other than like creative writing at school, where I put pen to paper. And I sort of, like teenagers and that, I did write in a diary, but it wasn't with any thought of getting anything published. So, no, I guess over the years I've always dabbled and that, but yeah, I didn't really seriously have a crack at it until my kids were sort of, I was busy working, I had kids, and, just didn't have time to write. So I can't say that, I wanted to be a writer from the time I was 15 or something, but I did write those song lyrics. So I had the urge to do that, I guess.
Yeah. So what was that moment when you decided that writing was what you wanted to do?
Yeah, I think it was when my son got his license. And before then, he'd been very busy with cricket and music, and
Mm,
there was a lot of running around to do, and, a lot of work and that kind of thing. So I think that freed me up. That gave me some hours when he got his license. And I thought, I spend a lot of time on top of everything else. Ferrying him around and picking him up
mm,
and doing all of that. And so I thought, even if I could devote a couple of hours a day to writing, I could get something started. So
mm,
it was then. So I
mm.
think that was back in about 2008. So I've
Okay.
been published now for 10 years.
Yeah. Mm. And Sharon wonders how long it took you to write Dead Horse Gap.
Probably about 5 months, I think.
Yeah.
It's, you've got to be fairly quick when you're putting out a book a year. And because the editing process takes a couple of months. You go through your first edit, your structural edit, then your copy edit, and then you go through, your proofread, and that. So the book's coming back to you 3 times, and there's weeks in between so that
Mm,
people, everyone can read it and work on it. So when you take that into consideration, and then you take into consideration almost a month of publicity. I have a great publicist, Laura, and she keeps me busy during the month of February. And so, I find it quite difficult to write much during the
mm,
publication because
yeah.
I'm talking about Dead Horse Gap. And so I'm talking about the book that I wrote last year. So doing the sort of sitting down and getting in the headspace to write the new book, I find it difficult. So I
Mm,
don't really start getting lots of words down until March.
mm,
So, you really, when you take those months out, you've really only got about 7 or 8 months
yeah.
to write the
Mm,
book.
mm. And Kelly wonders if you've got a favourite character in the series so far.
I'd have to say Ryder is
Yeah.
what I created first, and he was the one that I loved straight away, and I wanted to make flowers different to him, which I think I did.
Mm,
And people have got to love flowers as well, and I like flowers as well, but I
mm,
guess Ryder was the first one that sort of kicked off Charlotte Pass, I'd have to
yeah.
say.
Yeah. And Sharon wonders if you have much input into the covers. Just want to mention your covers are all very stunning and have the woman just on the side on each of your covers.
Yeah, I know. I'm really happy with them, and this
Yeah.
one is my favourite out of the
Mm,
three. I
mm,
was absolutely thrilled when I saw this one. The first two, I didn't have a lot of input into the first two, but this one, they do send you a questionnaire that says, about what something about the cover. I can't remember exactly what it is, but I don't think I said much. I mean, the snowy scene sort of spoke for itself, and the
mm,
main character was a girl, Vanessa, in the first one and Eva in the second one. So that sort of worked. But with this one, I actually said to them, I think it'd be good to have a hut,
yeah.
one of the Alpine
Yeah.
huts. I had that thing
Mm,
about the huts, and they thought that was a great idea. So they actually licensed the rights to that. This image here at the back, not the girl, but this one and the one on the back,
mm.
Cascades Hut. So that is an actual hut.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah.
from Dead Horse Gap, you can walk a 10-kilometre hike down a track, and you
And
come
you go
to
to the hut.
Cascades Hut.
Um,
There's a fellow called Mike Edmondson, and they licensed his photograph for the book cover and the banner, and
oh.
all marketing and everything
Mm,
like that. So I was absolutely thrilled with that.
mm,
That I got my hut, and I got Sterling on the front.
mm.
So yeah, that's my favourite actually.
Mm. And I'm wondering, seeing as the picture of the woman is so detailed and everything, like it's a photo, when you first see them, are you surprised, or they're exactly how you're imagining them in your
Well,
mind, or
yeah, well, with the first one, I was really happy with Vanessa, and with the second
mm,
one, I was happy with Eva. But when I saw this one, because This is the detective, but she is undercover. So in Krakenback, she's got the short blonde bob, when she joins the homicide squad. But because she's been undercover and she's working as a waitress in the pub, her blonde hair has grown out. And that's something that Flowers notices when he goes in there, that she's thinner from all the waitressing because she's on her feet all day. And everything, and she's lost weight, and also the blonde hair had grown longer, so she looked a bit different but still the same. So when I saw it, I actually thought, oh yeah, that's Sterling, but her hair's longer because it's sort of grown out now. While she's undercover. So I was really happy with it.
No, that's great. Belinda wonders why you chose the snowy region to base your series.
Yeah, I absolutely love that area. I first visited the Snowy Mountains when I was in Year 8. We went down on a school excursion, like many do, and we actually went through the Snowy Hydro Information Centre. So I was only about 12 or 13, and that was the where we had to go so that we could really go to the snow. They took us to the Snowy Hydro, but it was really interesting. I found that really interesting, and I also loved the Snowy Mountains. And then when I met my husband, he'd been down for a few weekends with his mates and that kind of thing, so I kept going back, and then we thought we'd take the kids down and see if just have a weekend in the snow. And our daughter absolutely took to it like a duck to water, and she became a ski instructor later on when she grew up. But I just love that area. It's just so different and unique. And the snow gums, which you can see on the cover, these snow gums and everything, they're just unique to Australia and to that area. They're beautiful with their twisted sort of trunks, and as the bark is stripped away, they become beautiful striped colours, and there's a drooping with the snow. But yeah, just the ruggedness. It's a tough landscape. And we all know Man from Story River, but I couldn't really think of any other books, crime novels that had been set down there. There might be, but it'd only be a handful. And I just thought, because of the weather, it becomes like another character in the story. So it becomes, as well as fighting for your life or running for your life, you're also battling the elements. Running from, you've got another threat, as well as the human threat. You've got the threat from the landscape, particularly in winter.
It certainly is a great location. It's somewhere I've never visited, but from reading your books, it makes me feel like I know a lot more about it.
Well, actually, some people have said to me that they're booked down there after reading my books. So, so I'm helping the tourism down there.
And Sarah wonders what gave you the inspiration for the series.
The inspiration for the series, I can remember sitting down having dinner with one of the girls up here and another writer friend, and we were having dinner, and I told them about this series. I said, I want to set a series in the snow. And when I got off the snowcat at Charlotte Pass the first time, because you can only get in and out of Charlotte Pass by over snow transport or a skidoo. And if you're unlucky enough to hurt yourself, you can be taken out by helicopter to the hospital. That's not optimal, but just trundling in on this snowcat that takes 20 minutes, half an hour from Perisher on a good run, and then you come down the road and into the valley, and this little tiny village is there, and it's just surrounded. You just look around and the mountains are just surrounding it. And I just remember getting off the snowcat and looking around and thinking this would make a great scene, a great setting for a murder, because you couldn't get out. How do you get out unless you have a skidoo? You've got to get in and out on this over snow transport, which means you've got to book it. You've got, you down to pay for it and all of that. And I remember thinking this would be a really great setting to trap, to kill someone and trap them in that setting. So that was the inspiration for them. And then I think it just evolved. And the next one, I thought I'd do it in Thredbo, and I'd actually lock them down in a lodge, and again, with the snow surrounding and the weather coming in and all those elements.
So when you wrote that first book, did you know that it was going to be a series?
Yes, I did. Yes, I knew that I had I knew what was happening in Krakenback, so I had that story worked out. I obviously knew what was happening in Charlotte Pass, and I had a vague idea of what Dead Horse Gap was. I knew it was going to be called Dead Horse Gap because I just love that name, even though there's no dead horses in it. It's just the name of the place, and it's the highest point on the Alpine Way between Thredbo and Cancoban. It's the highest point, but I had a vague idea of what I was going to write about in Dead Horse Gap, but that changed completely.
Okay.
The original idea, I didn't go ahead with it. I may use some characters that I had thought up in maybe another book, but it was totally different. So the first two was in my head, but not the third.
Okay. So the question on a lot of the people watching is, are there more books in the series?
They'll have to stay tuned for that, because when I did pitch the book to my editor, I did pitch it as a trilogy.
Yeah.
However, people are really enjoying the series, but I do have an idea for a fourth book, but it happens a few years down the track.
Okay.
So it's about someone being released from jail and the homicide squad are brought back together. That's the idea that I have for the fourth book. Whether that, and we did chat a bit about letting a bit of time elapse in real time.
Yeah.
Of course, that's the time elapses in the book.
Yeah.
So at the moment, I'm writing a murder mystery actually set on the coast in Newcastle.
Okay.
So I'm that's what I'm working on at the moment. But stay tuned, because we haven't made up our minds yet.
Well, yeah, I'm sure lots of us would love to see the characters back again. And Sarah wonders what the challenges are of writing a series of books.
Yeah, I think for me, writing the series, I don't like to rehash the same story again, but with different characters. So I was very conscious that even though there were common characters in the story of, the police force, that every book was different. So with Charlotte Pass, the main thing, that the centerpiece of the story is someone who died at a time in 1964 when there was a chairlift between Charlotte Pass and Thredbo, and it was only constructed and it only ran for 1 year. It was a very expensive project, but it actually only lasted one ski season. It turned out to be a lemon with lots of problems, and that's actually a factual thing.
That was a really interesting story. Yeah.
So that was, and people really reacted well to that. They were like, "Oh my God, I didn't know that," and they went and Googled it, and they were talking about it, and they contacted me and said, "I didn't know that. So cool! I didn't know about it." And so with the next book, I was conscious again that even though it's a crime novel, it's something completely different. So I'd listened to this fellow on the ABC radio about 11 o'clock at night when I was travelling home from Sydney one night. It was from a writers' meeting, and he was talking about interviewing a lady who'd written a book, a non-fiction book about kidnap insurance, and I thought, so it was really interesting. So I listened to that. And I knew I had the two people in my lodge, locked down in the lodge as the weather raged around them. But that helped me bring in his backstory from that. So I was careful to make that, completely different to Charlotte Pass and the chairlift. And with this one, I wanted the family feud, and I wanted the Alpine Huts in it, so that the family feud goes back to all the way back to the snow leases that were leased by, excuse me, the New South Wales government for the cattlemen to bring their cattle up to the high country in summer to the cooler climes. So, so that's the most challenging thing for me. It is to, while I've got the homicide squad in each book and some common characters, was to make sure that even though it was in that setting, that each book was completely a different story.
Yeah.
So, you know, I just didn't want to have another one like the same thing again and again.
Yeah. And I have to say that as a reader, that feels like they are quite different from each other. And certainly, I know a lot of people ask with series whether you can read them alone, and I think certainly you can read them all as standalones.
Read them all. Yes, you can read them all alone. Oh, sorry, I've just mixed up my words and I'm not being very articulate tonight. Yeah, you can read them as standalones. I was trying to say.
Jill's wondering what you like to read yourself, if you've got a favourite genre. And I'm wondering if maybe there is something you've been reading lately you want to recommend to us.
Yeah, look, I read crime novels. They're my absolute favourite. So I'll read anything from Lee Child, Michael Connolly, David Baldacci, John Grisham. I love the legal suspense and intrigue stories as well. Recently, I've read Fleur McDonald's Deception Creek. It's excellent. And I'm halfway through Sarah Barry's Unforgiven, which is also really good. I had to put it aside because I've been doing all the promo and everything for this one, but I can't wait to get back to that one. And funnily enough, I've just gone back to an oldie called Beach Music by Pat Conroy. He also wrote Prince of Tides, and I read Beach Music probably, I'd say it'd be 25 years ago, and I'm reading it again, getting a lot more out of it now. But yes, crime is my preferred genre.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing those recommendations. We always love adding more books to our lists of what to read.
Yeah.
Kelly wonders what your favourite part so far has been in your writing journey.
The favourite, look, I'd have to say getting Charlotte Pass published.
Yeah.
That was a real highlight. I was very lucky early on with my first book that was published in 2012. It's another series, a 3-book series, but it's a legal, set in Sydney as a legal trilogy about a fictional legal team. And I went along to a conference where they actually called, it was a writing conference, and they actually called for submissions, and I had a manuscript ready to go. So I submitted that, and it was for an ebook publisher. So I wrote 6 books. No, sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 books for that publisher, romantic suspense. And that was exciting, sort of being published back then. But I had written previously and had in the bottom drawer 2 books that I'd set in Charlotte Pass, not the Charlotte Pass that got published.
Oh, really?
So intent that was a setting that I wanted, that it took me all that time to get the right story. I wrote all these other books in the meantime, but that was the 3rd Charlotte Pass book that was submitted to Allen and Unwin, and they picked it up, Annette Barlow, thank goodness. And that was the book that I always wanted to write, and it was picked up by Allen and Unwin. So I was absolutely over the moon with that. I'd have to say that's the most.
Yeah. And Sharon wonders if you have a writing routine and whether you write every day.
No, I don't write every day, and I don't have a writing routine. I find I did try that, because you hear so many authors that say I get up at 5 o'clock and I write words before I do anything else, and I just can't do it. I get up at 6 o'clock and I walk. I go for a walk up over the cliffs and the beaches and the parks around Newcastle and over the historic hill section, and I come home and I have breakfast and do all that. And I actually write when I know what the next couple of chapters, 2 or 3 chapters, what's going to happen, and I've got it clear in my head. So while I might be walking, I'm also plotting in my head and thinking, oh yeah, I can do that and I can do that. And so when I feel okay, I know where it's going, then I sit down and write. And I do get on a roll, but I'm very slow for the first 50% of the book. The first half, I'm very slow. But then as soon as I get to that 50, it's around the 50% mark. And then I'm on that roll. I know where all the threads coming in. And so I write quick, more.
Nearer the end. Yeah.
Yeah. But no, definitely not in a routine. I can't write that way because what I found was that if I sat and wrote the 2,000 words, I deleted 1,500 of them. So it just didn't work for me.
Do you have a favourite place to write?
Usually I do have a desk. It's in the spare room. It's a nice space, but I've got an Irish Wheaten Terrier dog, and so I like being out the back in the family room. There's a doggy door out there where she can go out into the backyard and out onto the back veranda and I just like sitting on the lounge with my laptop, really. I usually come in here, which is it used to be like have a piano in here when the kids, my daughter's just taken it actually, the piano. So I've turned it into like a little reading room. And so now while I've been doing the promotion, I've been sitting in there talking on the phone. It's nice and comfortable I've got a comfy chair there, but usually the family room. I don't like to be isolated.
Yeah. And Sarah's got a good question. She wonders if there's been any interest in turning your books into a TV show or movie.
No, and I've had people have asked me that question before. I think that Charlotte Pass would be expensive to make.
Yeah.
And I think Dead Horse Gap would be expensive to make because of the footage that they'd have to take in wintertime and snow season. It would be incredibly expensive. I think that if any was going to be turned into a movie, it'd be the middle one, Crackenback, because the whole story virtually takes place inside this lodge.
Yeah.
I mean, there's one, the police go here and there to Jindabyne and that, but the couple involved only go into Jindabyne once in the car, and the whole thing is locked down. So that would be fairly cheap to make in Australia because you could have just the setting inside the lodge and then, a bit of what the detectives were doing. But the other two, I think it's a matter of dollars in Australia. And I just think they're just a bit too expensive. I'll keep my fingers crossed.
Yeah. And Sarah also wonders if you've got a background in crime or law.
No, I don't have a background in crime or law. That's a good question. As far as the crime goes, I have a detective friend who works in Sydney. And he's been on a number of the squads as well. So he's been in gang squad and that, as well as he's been in homicide. And so I run all my police procedural things through past him. He's still working. He's only in his 30s, so he's very much up to the minute on everything and the latest things. A lot of authors use retired policemen, but he's still working, so he likes to remain nameless. So I just thank him and keep his anonymity out of it. But yes, I run everything past him, and over the course of the book, I can have a chat to him, for a few hours, an hour here and an hour there, and it could be a total of 3 hours or 4 hours during the book. I don't try to bug him too much. I make a list and go through things and check, would this happen, and all of that. As far as the law part goes, I'm married to a solicitor. So I worked in a legal firm when I was young after I finished year 12 and went to business college. I then worked for a different firm in Newcastle. So I was a legal secretary and he was a law student when we met, and we met on a settlement. We actually went on a house.
Yeah.
And that's where we met. And then we got married, and we went to Sydney so he could finish his law degree. So I've been married now for 38 years. And during that time, while I was a corporate trainer after that, I retrained and I taught a lot of software and DOS and a lot of computer programs and things like that. But I've been surrounded by, because he had his own practice, he's sold that now, and he's still just working 3 days a week. But I've always been surrounded by that, and there have been times when we've lost staff, someone's left or become sick or something, and there was a time when I was in there I've done all the practice management in there as well, so manage the practice from time to time when I've needed to do it. So I've been surrounded, and all the legal stuff, because there is a bit of legal stuff in Dead Horse Gap with the trust that, this family have the trust on the property and that kind of thing, and there's a subdivision going on and with the council and that, so I run all that past him. I really bug him to death. I'm sort of, I've got another legal question, and I can see him after a while going, oh God, this is like work. I thought I've solved the practice.
Yeah, and you're asking me all these questions.
So I do have people that I can depend on. So if anything's wrong, it's not my fault.
And is he a reader of your books?
Yes, he's read Charlotte Parson Crackenback. He hasn't read this one yet. I think it's difficult when, for people family members that you're talking about the book all the time and running ideas past them, they kind of know a lot about it already.
Yeah.
So the best member of my family to give me honest feedback and just read it is my son. So he lives overseas, and so I send the book to him, and he hasn't been here while I've been talking about it, so he knows nothing about it. And I just say to him, well, just read it and give me your honest opinion. Whereas, my daughter is here and she reads each chapter as I write it. And gives me a bit of feedback, and then my husband as well. So, they sort of know what's going on. It spoils it a bit.
And you obviously, were very familiar with the Snowy region before you started writing these books, and I'm sure you've done a lot of research though as well and found different things out. Is there anything, when you've been doing your research, that you found was very surprising?
Yeah, look, quite a few things with Dead Horse Gap, with this one. First of all, the prologue, which I read, I had to find out what that pilot would be doing, how he would be feeling when he came in. So I know Helene Young, and a lot of readers will probably recognise her, may have even read her books. So Helene was a Qantas captain, and she writes romantic suspense as well. So I contacted her and asked her what the pilot would be thinking and doing when he came in, because Cancoban Airport is notoriously tricky. You've got to be a fairly skilled pilot to come in, and also land at night is tricky as well. So I contacted Helene, and I contacted a pilot up here in the Hunter Valley who I had met, and they gave me different sorts of information. So the pilot up here, the guy, he was more like, well, if he's a bit of a cowboy and he's coming in over the mountains, and, he'd be checking that he's got enough go juice, he'd be checking that his plane he wouldn't want to have had a fight with the missus, because he needs to be in the right headspace if he's flying in, doesn't want to be distracted by anything else, so it's important to do that. He was the one that actually said to me that a tractor would be a good thing to have in the middle of the airstrip, because I had been down there to G High, which is another old airstrip, and it's absolutely riddled with rabbit warrens. They were hopping around everywhere, the rabbits, and I thought, maybe there could be a wombat hole or something like that the plane comes in and it hits that and it flips and bursts into flames, something like that. I was thinking along those lines at that stage. But then I thought, no, it's a properly, like, it's owned by the Snowy Hydro. It's a well-maintained airport. I can't have that. And I was talking to him and he said, well, one of the biggest worries is something blocking the runway.
Yeah, yeah.
And on a country airstrip that has grass around it, it would be a tractor would be blocking the runway. And one of the readers, Len Clump, who often reads, is a voracious reader of Australian books. And I knew that Len worked at Tamworth Airport. And so I rang him about the tractor, and he's put Facebook posts up when he's on the tractor and he's paints the lines down the middle of the runway. He looks after all the maintenance and everything. And I thought he would be the one to ring and ask where this tractor would be kept on this airport. And I rang him and he said, well, up here in Tamworth's a lot bigger airport, but he said, up here, we've got a pen like just a fence, and it's locked, and then the key is in the building. And I said to him, well, I'd been Googling are tractors easy to hotwire?
Yeah.
And you can find anything on YouTube.
Yeah.
So it said, oh, the fascia comes off really easily and it's just 2 wires. And I said to him, oh, I've been Googling hot wiring a tractor. And he said, oh, you wouldn't even have to do that, Lee. He said, all the tractors, he said, the new electronic ones might be different, but he said the sort of older tractors, they all worked off a common key.
Yeah, okay.
And I went, oh my God, you've just given me a nugget. You just asked me about, is there anything surprising in research that I found out? All of a sudden, anyone who owned a John Deere tractor was a suspect.
Yeah.
So that was so I was like, oh, Len, this is great.
Yeah.
Giving me that nugget. So with research, don't, if anybody budding writers are out there, don't depend on Google. You've got to get in. If you don't have first-hand knowledge yourself, get out and talk to the people.
Yeah.
It really is the best way to find out information.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for talking to me. It's great to talk to you again. As I said, it's our 3rd time talking together, which is great. And I think you were probably one of the very first authors we had on Global Girls.
Very early on.
Yeah, you were. So great to talk to you again, and hope to talk to you again, maybe similar time next year. You might have another book out.
Fantastic. Yeah, I look forward to it, Jackie. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, no, it's been lovely catching up.
And thanks for the people who joined in and the questions that were asked. We had some great questions. Thanks.
Yep, fantastic. It's been really nice.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.